Welcome to the stream. Can you hear? I hope the chat's here. Oh man, nobody is here. That's rough. This is our first nobody is already in the waiting room show, and I think it's because that community call. That's okay. This will be fun.
Okay. Well, since no one's here, although we've been talking about personal appearance the entire time, did you notice that I had a haircut?
I noticed something was up, if I'm being completely honest.
Was up.
But like, okay, so we just had a whole, are we going to change shirts kind of scenario going on? I was like, wait, Kristen just changed her shirt. Maybe that's the thing that's different. So okay, so there was that, and then
there's something else that's different about my face. I'm gonna put you on the spot. What else did I change besides my hair?
Oh no, eyebrows.
Yes. Oh, okay. Very good. Yes, I got my eyebrows threaded. Yes. I usually do it at the same time, so that it's not too obvious what I did.
Okay, I had another. I have an unfiltered thought. I was gonna say like, oh, like you look like a very clean cut young Michio Kaku.
Michio Kaku. Who?
He's a physicist. He's a physicist.
Oh my god!
With luxurious hair.
Surely he is not talking about the physicist whose book
yes. I was just like, oh, like it's like the perfect length. It falls on your shoulders very well, and I'm like, oh, that's like good ass hair.
Androgynous look I've always wanted. Actually, you know what's even worse though? I went with my wife, and of course, like it's like an Asian, hairstylist, and then he gave us almost exactly the same haircuts. And there's really nothing worse than looking twinsies. And also, this is actually her shirt.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I didn't realize until I spent a summer in Taiwan that like they cut hair different. If that makes like that probably like that's obvious to you. It was not obvious to me. Like I grew up in the South, where like it was like 95% like white public school, and like so just like culturally I did not have that connection until honestly I went to college and then spent a ton of time there, and I was like, when I got a haircut, I was just like, I've never gotten a haircut with my hair ending up in this shape because I got it done by like their military barbers. It was crazy.
Well, we are joined by friends. Yay!
Yeah. Thank y'all for coming. We honestly weren't sure. So it looks like Dan was first. Thank you so much. You want to start naming those while we transition over to these bangers?
Name that. Mikado, thank you so much for joining us. Known as Smalley. Kaido, yay, you made it. Tudorizer. Your PFP always reminds me of my friend's Trending Cast comics because it's from that same Stanley Pablo guy set. Adrian, Captain, Eloise, Melanin, Free Trades, Bubbles, Captain. Oh, Smoking
Free Trades, is that a Switching Sides meme reference? That if so, that's like a really good one. I appreciate that.
Oh wow.
There, Kristen, do you know that meme?
No. And it's so funny. Like, he was just complimenting me on my meme game, and I'm like, oh, revealing my inadequacies.
Well, this one's a video game meme.
It's coming from work. Abu Bakar, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, buddy. There's somebody in our chat that's in, or maybe not they're in the chat yet, but somebody that watches our show is in Cyprus, which I just thought was really cool. I'm not going to say their name in case I don't want people to know that, but I like saw from one of their pictures that they were in Cyprus. Like, oh, that's really cool. Marvin, thanks for dropping by.
Stats.
Yeah, no, I like did some open source intel analysis. The meme is basically an announcer, and I think in a game just is like switching sides, and then like there's a ton of stuff about like switching sides and social situations now. There's a ton of TikToks about it. All right, so today we're talking about what?
Looks.
Oh wait, that's not work.
Despite our introduction, the first banger being about appearance.
Surprise! This is actually an insecurities episode. No, this is we're talking about work, which I guess is also an insecurity.
Oh, I do have a life tip though. Okay, so
please,
like, of course, like my women friends taught me this one. Always say first, your hair looks nice. Then, did you have a haircut? because it's much less awkward if you say it in that order. Because if you say, "Did you have a haircut?" and the person says no, then you just have like awkward silence. Whereas if you say, "Let's start with a compliment, then
Hmm.
inquire about haircut," then it lands a
Hmm.
lot softer.
Now, where does not noticing anything at all fall into like the spectrum of things you
Well,
should do?
that's what happened to me at dinner last week with my friends, and me. So I totally understand the not noticing.
Like, okay, so there's like a weird, not weird. I actually really empathize with the notion of men and weaponized incompetence. Like I empathize with like the female perspective of like, yeah, a lot of dudes are like, "Oh, I'm just not good at that stuff," so they don't have to freaking wash the dishes or whatever. Like
Mhm.
that's real. I've seen that. I've done that, honestly. Like not consciously, but like once it was pointed out to me, I was just like, "Oh no, yeah, that is kind of what I'm doing." And I'm not like a baby. I'm like a grown ass man. I can figure out how to like wash the dishes even if I'm like not good at it. That's not the example that like it typically happens. Like I
I'm gonna
like
clip this
washing
for your
dishes.
wife later.
Do it. Um, she'll be like, "Ah, you're weaponized incompetence in other ways." So I'm like, "Yeah, that's fair." Um, that is a really good tip though. I have a bit of not anxiety, but like I used to be really into reading like social engineering books. Have you ever like done anything like that?
Oh, you mean like the era of the game?
No, not like super gross, but like specifically like pen testers and like physical pen tester. Like I think that's really interesting. Like there's a phenomenal podcast called Darknet Diaries, which I don't know if it's still running, but it just like takes an interesting aspect of like cybersecurity or just kind of like security in general and does a deep dive on it. They do like deep dives on stuff like DEF CON, things like that, like teams that win DEF CON. But they did this one episode with this physical security penetration tester. And so like if y'all don't know, there's like a real no joke job out there where people get hired to like try and break into companies. Like not to, steal the crown jewels or whatever, but like to like see if they can steal stuff off a hard drive or whatever. But in order
Mhm.
to get to the hard drive, they have to like climb fences and sneak indoors and things like that. And so like social engineering is a huge part of that. And so like if you're trying to get in somewhere, yeah, you could scale the fence, or you can dress in Patagonia like everybody else that's going out to lunch at Sweet Green and then like
Mhm,
walk in with the
mhm.
pack and like follow, like that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
be
yeah.
really, really into studying that. And so whenever I'm like, oh, that's a good tip on how to interact with people, I'm just like, oh, is that just creepy social engineering? Like, where do you think that line is?
Oh gosh. Oh, this is a whole discussion.
Yeah.
I think you have to. It's like one of those ethics questions where you have to go scenario by scenario because they're all context
Ugh.
dependent. You know. Um,
Nuance.
I know.
Gross.
Nuance.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would love to know these tips. So please share them with me after the show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Sure. We will scheme to manipulate people for our personal gain. You heard it from
Exactly.
Kristen first.
All
All right.
right.
So let's
So
get into
speaking of
this
which,
work meme.
Dennis.
We got a job to do, Kristen. Focus. Um,
Mhm.
do you do this? For our audio listeners, this is a meme of the Golden God himself, Dennis from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Me looking at myself on Zoom while the other person is talking. I'm literally doing this right now.
Oh, you
Like,
are? That's so
yeah.
funny. I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Dark Rest. Yes, please hit the like button while you're watching
Yeah.
because that helps with YouTube algorithms." Yeah, I do that. And then like, there was a phase. Do you remember during the pandemic when there was a phase where everyone was like, "You should turn off self-view
Uh,
so during Zoom meetings and blah blah blah." And people did that and I was like, "Heck no, I'm not doing that. I want to see
yeah.
in case I have some schmutz on my face."
Sch- what is schmutz? Can you
You just never
define
know.
schmutz? The okay. So here's my weird take about this. So I think people don't really think about themselves that often. Like people think about themselves constantly, but they don't really think about themselves like in context that often. Does that make any sense?
Explain.
So like okay, we used to just live life. And so, you woke up, you would go to your job, you would do your thing, or if you know you were in
Oh, yeah.
like you didn't have this context of
You're not
hey,
staring at a mirror of yourself the entire time.
yeah, and like even like today with computers, even if you're not like on camera, there's usually a
Mhm.
camera somewhere in your eye line, or you look into the black mirror of a turned off screen and you like see yourself. And
Yes.
like we used to not have mirrors. Like we could only see ourselves. Like it was a meaningful plot line
Mhm,
in folklore and folk tales for animals and people to see themselves in the reflection of water because it wasn't a commonplace event. And
mhm.
so like over time we've gotten more and more to a space to a world where we're just like seeing like images and simulacrums of ourselves constantly, and I think that changes how you think. It like I don't know how it changes how you think. Maybe you can answer that, Miss Neuroscience Lady. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, they do this experiment where, you're sitting there, and then they replaced your real arm with a fake arm,
Yeah,
and
I've
then
seen
like
that
they do
one.
some exercises. After a while, you stab that arm and you freak out. It's something like that where like we start to overly identify with the image of ourselves. I mean, you were just making fun of me, right? So before
Yeah,
we started the show,
we
welcome
had
to
an
our
argument.
conversation again.
We were
Super,
fighting. Let's
yes,
rehash
yes.
it.
Let's rehash our fight. I was like, okay, Cameron was like, I have a pimple.
I do.
And then we were talking about pimple patches, and I was like, "Why don't you just use touch up your appearance on Max like I do?" By the way, I have it on like Super Max.
Yeah.
And then Cameron used it, and he was like, "I look so smooth. I look like freaking Legolas from Lord of the Rings." And I was
Here,
like, "Yes, like we." Like,
see this is Legolas mode. This is normal mode. Let's get a little closer. Legolas mode, normal mode. Like I don't like that. Like obviously that's not like a controversial thing to say, you know, like there's plenty of people way smarter than me talking about like self-image, body image stuff, but like it is pretty freaking crazy how normalized Legolas mode is. Like not a like comment on people that do it because it's kind of like an arms race scenario, right? Because we
it's
know from
called
the data prettier
makeup without
people
the
are more
work.
successful.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and then
I mean,
like
like,
I think now it's an arms race, right? Because if you don't have it on, then it's like super obvious that you don't have it on. And then like there's also those
are
like
you saying like
those like Chinese TikToks where literally they have a different face because they tuned it so much.
dude,
Like
yeah, we're in a
so
crazy
so I
time.
wonder how they feel on the inside. I feel like that is bizarre, right? Because it's like uncanny
Yeah.
valley of reality. Anyway, chat, let us know if you okay,
Yeah.
so to make me feel like self-conscious, do you turn on touch up your appearance in Zoom and other apps?
Yeah.
Or do you just
And
not even know about this function?
yeah, tell me if you want Cameron to be on Uggo mode or not. All right. Let's go to this next one. So this is from our friend of the show, I Speak Nerd. Anyone else thank their AI after a brainstorm session? Just feels right. Do you?
Yes. If it's like a dialogue thing, especially now, have you tried the advanced voice control mode in ChatGPT?
I have. It's like I'm in like a weird habit valley where like I try most of the new things that happen a couple times, but I
Mhm,
haven't
mhm,
adjusted my life to actually use things. You know what I mean?
mhm, mhm.
What about you?
So what's really remarkable is that it speaks perfect Cantonese. Oh no, close to perfect. Like, it's like
That's
wow.
crazy.
I was like so impressed because
That's
Cantonese
nuts.
is not that easy to learn compared to Mandarin.
Yeah.
So like pro tip: if you grew up with a different language besides English, try talking to AI in your native language and see if it makes you cry. Because
If it makes you cry,
yes, okay, so
okay.
I've been like, can you
Can
treat
you
me like loving parents, please? This is what actually happened in between me freaking out to
can okay?
you yesterday
Hold on.
about work.
For the clip, can you say what it said to you in Cantonese and then talk about it?
Oh gosh, my Cantonese isn't even really good enough to repeat what it said. It was something
That's
like,
crazy.
I'll say it in English, but I was like, I feel like I'm being hypocritical, and then I was like, how do you say hypocritical in Cantonese? Because my issue is I don't know how to describe my emotions in my childhood language anymore. So then
Whoa.
I had to teach me how to say hypocritical in Cantonese,
That's
which I already
crazy.
forgot what the word is. And then like I was like, yes, it is normal to feel that way. And I was like, well, yeah, exactly. So this is what I was
Okay.
actually doing.
Full-throated endorsement from Kristen on AI therapist. Holy crap. That's nuts,
Well,
Kristen. I didn't know that.
it is so nuts. Because the thing is, I've done this in like normal ChatGPT in English before, and
Yeah.
I'm like, it's good, but it's not like that good.
Okay, cool. Let
Okay,
me
so
just
anyway,
mental
more dystopia.
Yeah,
Black
let me just
Mirror.
mentally reframe like the complete upending of how society works, like accelerate that another 5 years.
Exactly.
Huggle Monster, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate you liking my shirt. I have thought about my appearance a lot, and so it's nice when it's noticed. All right. Do you have any idea why I picked this one for work? It is an uncaptioned picture. Pretty
No,
picture.
I don't know.
I was like, I'm just kind of in awe that this is some people's work. You know what I mean? Like this is like they show up to their office, their studio, like their, the corner
Mhm.
in their apartment where they like do art, and they just put out work. And this is the kind of thing that they put out. And I think that's beautiful.
Do you secretly want to be doing this all day?
I don't know if I'm secret about it. And I also don't know if I want to do it. Like, so one, visual art is like one of the things that I have never like I've never been good at, and also I've never put in the time to be good at.
Mhm, mhm.
Excuse me. Other than like so actually, we'll drop some cam lore. In high school, and I don't know if he'll ever see this show, but there was a guy in my friend group that was just like he was like so cool. You know what I mean? Like you ever have a friend where you like meet them and you're like, oh man, they like listen to cool music. They live
Mhm,
their
mhm.
aesthetic. They like, like
Mhm,
they do
mhm.
that thing. And I was like an emo kid, if anyone in the chat knows what that is. And so like that like thing that I was like aspiring to be as a teenager, like he embodied a lot of that. And so like he was also a phenomenal visual artist. And so like multimedia, he was great at graffiti, he could like draw sketches, whatever. And so like there was a period of time where I just like tried to be like him in the way that, like 14-year-old kids try to like be exactly like somebody that they think is cool.
How old
Double
is this
D.
person?
We were both like 14, 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Really
he's an
different.
adult now. I think he went to like art school. I don't know what he's doing now.
Mm.
Um, but the very different life paths. But like the point is like it's really really no, the twist is that he continued to get cooler, and then I went into the army, and then whatever happened after that is that. Um, and so but so like I think what's the point? The point is that I find it really beautiful when people get to align their work, which is like pretty much the thing that you do the most of in your life.
Mhm.
Like it's really beautiful when people get to align that work with their day-to-day life, because most people, at least historically, have not gotten to do that, and that's really cool.
Well, and I feel like as, you and I do more of this stuff, like, I really admire, like, Priyanka, Bias, like, Talam Chop. There's a lot of really great artists
Yeah,
online. And I get to
like
ask them, like, "How I be you?" And then and then they're like, "You need to put in your 10,000 hours." And I'm
like
like,
oh,
"Oh,
work,
yeah,
gross.
exactly, work." And so I think there is something where you and I are practicing like the talkie, the yappy
Yeah,
art, right? But I we made this logo and all this aesthetic, but there's this constant aesthetic like visual thing. Like if you can do that and be a good like word cell, I feel like that makes you exceptional as a content creator online.
I think so too. I wonder though, because like we're commoditizing a lot of things. We're commoditizing a lot of skills right now. And so like,
Do you
you
think
know,
Branson would know about this person's art if they were not good at marketing?
can you ask that again? I didn't understand.
So I don't know very much about this artist, but my
Same.
impression is that like any artist that I see, it's because the fact I even know about them is because they are like extremely good at marketing. And
Mm,
that's the differentiator. It's like they're so good at marketing, you get repeated exposure, and then you start to admire and want to purchase their art?
Well, I don't know. Like if I'm being my brutal creator judge hat on right now, like they casted twice today, and then the last time they casted was 5 days ago. So like I don't know how.
Yeah, but they might be on Twitter.
That's true. Yeah.
As we have discussed, this platform is for artists. Question
True.
mark.
True.
Yeah.
Big old question mark there.
Yeah.
But speaking of doing the work, we got one of my personal aesthetic and grind set discipline focus heroes out there. Arnold Schwarzenegger, according to my buddy Grin, and you've met Grin, right?
Yes.
He's a good dude. You research, you read, you get deep into the weeds, but you don't do the work. It's time to be honest with yourself. If you aren't doing the basics, why are you worried about optimizing anything? You're not optimizing right now. You're missing the 99% with the hope that the 1% will save you. Full disclosure, I don't know if Arnold actually said this, but I like the energy. Yeah.
And then I'm going to show what you replied.
Did I reply? Oh, yeah. Look,
it's us.
Yeah, I did do that. The reality of like work is that it's work. And that's a dumb thing to say, but it might be like the most important thing to say. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to close that because we can get into our debate.
Okay.
So that, that quote, and given what we know about Arnold's personal biography, which I do know a little bit about, like the in the context of that is probably about like bodybuilding, right? And
yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like he's trying to call out all the bodybuilding nerds who are like blah blah blah, but then you just need to get the big lifts in the way. I agree. Like I think you don't at your normal everyday person level, you don't have to do that much of refinement.
Yeah. The said a different way for all the bodybuilding stands in the chat, all two of you, I'm assuming. Everybody want to be a bodybuilder, but ain't nobody want to lift that heavy ass weight. That's Ronnie Coleman, one of the greats.
Exactly. And yeah, Tutorizer. Funniest comes from Arnie, since within his space currently a lot of folks optimize 1%. Exactly. He maybe be talking to his own fans. However, like in terms of like work ethic and things like that, there is something he did that allows him, I think, way more opportunities to do whatever he wants.
Yes.
And what is that one thing that he did?
I'm going to say yap, but I don't know what you're thinking.
Real estate investing.
Oh, interesting. I haven't heard that lore.
Yeah, so like when he was doing his early bodybuilding, he was super dirt poor. So he was smart. He was like, well, what is the skill I can do that, benefits my body and also gets me money? So he became a really good bricklayer. So then he was do a lot of contract work, so he can get the tan and he gets his workouts and whatever. But then immediately he invested the money in early LA real estate. So by the time he became an actor, it's because he had enough cushion of money to take all the jobs that no one else can afford to take.
So should we cut the podcast and just like try to buy real estate? Like, is that what you're saying to me?
No, but I'm just saying that but he did optimize. You see, he thought ahead and was like, hey, I see a lot of these actors, they go going for their dreams, but like, they're too dirt poor. I don't have enough money. So therefore I'm going to optimize for what I need first. So there is, I think that's the secret, is that he is naturally really smart and really good at optimizing. So for him to go, don't optimize, I feel like sometimes I'm like, it's tricky.
I don't know if I'd consider that optimizing. Like I definitely agree that it's like doing other things, but like optimizing is like the process of making the thing that you're doing more efficient, like getting to the end state like faster. And I think it's like really hard to say, hey, him doing real estate is optimizing the bodybuilding thing. It is like setting the conditions to be able to spend more time doing it. But I don't think I'd consider that optimizing. But like I'm open to the idea. That's interesting.
So I feel like our everyday decisions are more about optimizing what we do, right?
Yeah.
And there's like two types. There's like, optimizing the thing you're already doing to be slightly better, which I do think you do to some degree. That's the 1%, right? But then identifying the right thing to do, isn't that also optimizing?
Yeah, so like the definitional, so like here's like a weird literary take. I think all definitions are contextual. Like there's a lot of people that don't
Mhm,
think like that. Like a word is a word, it has its meaning. I
mhm,
think language is a lot more flexible and fluctuates, and like people invent words obviously all the time. And so
mhm,
like I try to take anything, like any signal somebody's sending to me, in the context that it's like being sent.
mhm,
Um, to me, this is like maybe like covering up some other things. But like at the end of the day, in order to do bodybuilding, you need three things. You
mhm.
need money to support yourself while you're buying a lot of food and
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm,
You need time, which
mhm,
is like basically having like, at the start only like an hour or so a day, but like over time you need to be working out like 3+ hours a day to like be at the elite levels. And then you need the like discipline, giddy up grit, whatever you want to call it, to just like
mhm,
go and beat the crap out of yourself for a long period of time.
mhm.
A lot of other people would say there's a secret fourth thing, which is steroids, which is like honestly kind of true for modern bodybuilding, but
Well,
like,
it's not even a secret anymore. I feel like now
yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody's quite open about taking it.
Yeah, which is really interesting. I think that there's going to be a wave of changing legislation, at least in the U.S., about it in the next few
Mhm,
years. But like,
mhm,
I'm not a supporter of it for real. But anyway, so in this context, I think it's like, hey, you can be the smartest person in the world about the thing,
mhm.
but unless you do the thing, it's not really going to happen. And like, perhaps your opinion means less about it. And so like, the optimizing is like he's not using optimizing in the way that like I think we're trying to argue about it.
Mhm.
But maybe I'm wrong with that.
So I think there is like a little bit of like Christian lore, to do
Oh
with
yeah, yeah,
this,
yeah.
right?
Please
Because
drop it. It's
yeah,
cool.
I think where I, start to question of am I doing the right thing is when
Mm,
like I've seen like the generations of my family. It's like we're all like hardworking people. Like literally like the tribe I come from, the Hakka tribe, is like known to be hardworking or whatever and grindy. So however, I often feel like we're trapped in this cycle of like grinding and working, but not
okay.
actually improving our station because
Mm,
you know what I mean? You start doing the same thing that you've done before. And therefore, that changes me to be almost reactionary of like, oh gosh, I'm not doing the optimal thing for the outcomes because I've seen this story before where, I do like almost like what Arnold said. It's like, do the fundamentals, but that actually does not give you the, stochastic outcome that you would want in this
it
Lulu world that we're in.
like clarifying question.
Mhm.
Are you solving for the same variables your family did?
So yes and no. I think we are all like in this like survival slash thriving variable
Those
solving, right?
those are so different states though. Like, sorry, please continue. But like, I think
Mhm.
surviving and thriving are completely different equations to solve for.
I agree. And I'm already like, if I was like solving for surviving, I would not be talking to you right now. Like,
Yeah,
this is
I
clearly not
agree.
solving for
This would
surviving.
be a big waste of time if you
Yeah,
like
yeah,
really had existential risk right now.
exactly, exactly. So it's like, but it's also like this like feeling of like oh there and I think this is true also if you look back on all these like case studies of like breakout success there's
Mm.
often like something weird that happened that you need to
Okay.
watch out for and capture that value
Yeah. Can I
or like
ask?
mhm,
Can I ask like? Because I think the family question is really, really interesting and important, and I have like my family background that is a version of this too. Um, like what was like the dream outcome for like whatever family member like you put in as like
mhm.
your comparison? Like
Like what
what
do
was
they
their
want
dream outcome? Like
their dream outcome
obviously
is almost like your life.
interesting. So like a status outcome with education?
Oh, no, 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 with
Oh,
money.
okay.
I think, that's a funny
Oh,
thing
got it.
is that, like, considering like, what I do is actually kind of black sheep. Like
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
like my pursuit of education. Because it's not
Yeah,
like, of course my parents are proud of me, whatever, but the actual education itself is not super valuable if it doesn't have economic value. So in a way, I
sure.
chose the wrong path in that sense,
Mm.
because what I did wasn't actually going to give up the best financial outcomes. It would have been
Was it
going to
gonna
school or something.
would it have been right if you'd become a neuroscientist?
Like a successful academic one, sure, but the
Okay,
odds were not in my favor. And it's like I have to
for
be
sure.
willing to sacrifice way more years of no income for a small chance of making it.
I mean, I guess this is a dumb question, but could you have gone into like a doctor practice as a neuroscientist and started making money a lot sooner?
If I had applied to the right programs, I think if
Ah,
I,
okay.
if I go back in time, yeah, I would know to do different programs, blah blah blah.
Got it. The
Um, but yeah, there's this whole like I understand if I'm bringing it up. It's like I am trying to solve for past problems or like past dreams,
mm,
and that's the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
like
yeah,
inheritance of other people's dreams kind of thing.
yeah.
Which makes me question sometimes like what you and I are doing. Like whenever I catch us doing anything that's like a little bit like, oh, you just gotta grind the fundamentals, I question because I see that the
It's
people who are
triggering.
successes, they don't do that. They break the rules.
Mm. I think I agree with parts of that, and I disagree with a lot of it because like the
I love
work part of the work part of the equation, no matter what you're doing,
it. Mhm.
doesn't go away. It's like really a question of working on the right parts of it. Because
Mhm.
like I agree with you that there are plenty of people that like do their thing and they grind on it and they do it for 30, 40 years, but the thing that they were like working on getting really really good at was never like there was no chance of an asymmetric success outcome. However, like you want to define it. Cuz like there's a lot of ways that you can define it, right? Like
Mhm.
there are people on the internet that like make a couple grand a month and they sustain themselves with that, and to them that is their dream outcome, and like there's nothing wrong with that. That's not really how we're thinking about it, but the main difference that I see between like myself and previous generations in my family is like the thing that they were optimizing for is kind of like a stability outcome,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Mhm.
like it's like stability outcome is also a challenging thing to do depending on where you're starting from. And so like doing something so that you can like know your, we'll say, economic outcomes in this case, like
Mhm.
doing something so that you know you're going to hit like a tolerance band of income,
Mhm.
like you make a different set of decisions as you're going through that process than if you are like working for an asymmetric outcome. In fact, like it's a lot more linear of a journey. It's a lot
Mhm.
more like steady progress of a
Right,
journey.
right.
Whereas like a system where asymmetric outcomes are possible
Mhm.
effectively looks like a venture capital portfolio or like a betting portfolio where like a handful of outlier wins actually
Mhm.
make the bulk of your success, like winnings, whatever that is for you. And so
Totally.
like
A Talib-esque thing.
yeah. And so like but I don't think that that means like oh, working and grinding isn't part of it. It just means that like most of the effort in the grinding part isn't going to have outsized returns, so it like maybe sneakily feels like you're not going anywhere when in fact like you are doing the right thing. It's just scary. What do you think about that?
I feel like we're actually talking about two different things.
I think so too.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, you and I do lots of grinding things all the time to make this show happen.
Yeah.
Um, like to me, it's more about like when I say optimize, as you
Yeah.
know, oftentimes I talk have a list of A to Z things that Cameron and I need to do, and
Yeah.
every once in a while, I'll be like, oh no, we gotta do item K first because the world has changed, and we gotta like be responsive to what's happening in the world. So I think like that also is the difference. Is like I
Yep.
don't mind the work. I always am very aware of the world changing and adapting to that. Again, more Kristen lore.
Mm.
And I wonder if anyone relates to this. I think it has to do with the fact that like my family survived various disasters and like economic downfalls because they were they saw things coming a little bit earlier, so they're able to escape in time. So that
Hmm.
pre-selects genetically, like for people who are like really anxious, right? In a
Yeah.
way. So, and I see this in other different ethnic groups too. It's like the ones who made it here in America tend to be a little bit anxious because they're the ones who saw things earlier. So it's almost like it's an adaptive trait I need to watch out for, because of course the downside, as you often point out, is that if you spend all day rejiggering your priorities, you're not actually doing any of the things. All you're doing is like playing this juggling game by yourself.
Yeah. And to kind of like, so like my side of it is like, I kind of err on the like my plans are measured in centuries meme. Like the obviously not literal centuries.
Days.
I mean hours sometimes, honestly, Krista, if we're being real. They like, but like why I anchor on that is because I know my predisposition is not quite the exact same as you, but it's to spend all of my time thinking about what is the best way to do it. Because like that's fun for me. I like thinking. I frankly spent a large part of my childhood by myself in my room, just like thinking and scheme. You know what I mean? And so like, if I let myself, I will spend days and weeks like planning the perfect plan, and then I end up in the Arnold Schwarzenegger camp of like, oh, I didn't actually lift the past 3 weeks. How could I ever become a bodybuilder if I don't exercise? And so I think we have a little bit of we'll call it an uneasy truce towards our approach to like this podcast, where like there are things that you
truce. Yikes.
I mean, if it was an easy truce, it would mean that we'd agree on everything. And I don't think that that's true. I think it's like,
is that what truce means? That just means, I thought a truce implies some compromise.
Yeah, and I think that we have, because like when you want to bring up the handshake line.
Oh yeah. So, so like yesterday, chat, I was, actually this exact conversation of like, oh gosh, we got to do this other thing, as things have changed, blah blah blah. But then, Cameron has seen me go through the cycle enough times where he just gives me the handshake emoji in Telegram, so you need the little animation, and then I was like, that's all I needed to hear. And then essentially we're still doing the same thing as we were deciding even before yesterday. So I feel like you've learned to what I actually am seeking is some sort of feeling heard, and that's the handshaking.
I think I have come to that conclusion, to pat myself on the back a little bit, but I also think that like you think out loud in a way that's like useful, and in the same way that like we realize we can't react to everything that happens to us, we can't react to every algorithm change like on the day that it happens,
right
because,
like,
and
then when you said it's not going to happen overnight, I was like, well.
like the world takes time for like stuff to actually play out, and like annoyingly you can't actually know what the right response is to a lot of things until you have a little bit like better data about it. And so like, will that cause me personally with my bias to like miss some split second opportunities? For sure. But I'm kind of making a bet on it being like a long-term strategy to be like, hey, like we would call this like developing the situation in the army. And like a lot of the times, if you react to the first bit of info that comes out, like you might have just got psyoped. You know what I mean? Like there's like,
that's true.
There's like
also,
actual
there was
bad actors.
Really like hypocritical or like tautological about this whole situation. So chat, what I was also talking to Cameron about is that like I have a bunch of pre-existing supporters through my Web2 days, and then I was like,
for like content stuff
like Substack, Twitter, that kind of thing. But I felt like I did a poor job of maintaining consistency in communication, especially since I, came over to Farcaster, etc. Because I couldn't keep up of like talking to everybody, updating them on what I'm up to every single week. So I feel like the retention of people's connections with me has actually fallen from the previous situation.
Which is a big deal for someone trying to make a living doing content stuff.
Exactly. Ideally, it would be cumulative, but in reality, it's like, everyone's busy, and then like there's other creators, so everyone's always like drifting away, right? But I think what has happened, Cameron, is that I was too jumpy before,
Yeah.
which in a way created my current situation
Yeah.
of going, oh no, I think I lost people because I was too jumpy. And I was jumpy about that. And then I'm like, I think the common variable is me.
Like I don't want to paint you as a picture as somebody that like is like a hummingbird flitting from thing to thing, because I don't think that's accurate. But I do think that there's some marketing realities where like think of like the top 10 content creators that you can think of. Most of them are like known for like one or two things.
Yeah.
And they just like talked about that thing for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I don't think that's a function of, hey, all these people are one-dimensional flat like characters. I think it's a function of like humans can only process so much at any given time because like they just don't friggin' care because they got, like you said, busy lives and a lot of stuff going on. And so my goal with our uneasy truce, which I think I am gonna plant a flag. Like I think it's an uneasy truce, not like we don't like each other, but the nature of it is still developing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the positive outcome of it is like you push me to react to things a little bit more quickly than like maybe I would if I was on my own. And then I help you maintain a sense of stability, like sometimes intraday, but like
Mm-hmm.
definitely from day to day of like, hey, we said that these were our goals for like clips, for like other videos, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When we achieve that goal, we can't be anxious that we didn't do enough because we decided those goals when we were like sane, rational people 2 weeks ago.
Right,
And
right. And I think
and
that to me, like that kind of answers the question of like what how can we enjoy work? I feel like I 100% enjoy work if I
Yeah.
feel it is the right thing. The moment I don't enjoy work it's actually when I'm having doubt of like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh my god, am I wasting my time? That makes the work unenjoyable.
do
So
you,
it's like having that alignment of like this is important
mhm.
and like gives me enjoyment. That's what I
do you,
realized about myself.
do you enjoy work or do you enjoy tasks?
What's the difference?
It's a good question. I think tasks are a subset of work. For me, work is like a bucket of activities that get me closer to whatever goal I'm trying to achieve at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
The like key piece of work, maybe this is implied in how I'm trying to define it, is that it is getting me closer to that like goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the empty calorie work, which is kind of like what you're talking about, where you're just like doing stuff and it's not going to help you or not going to help your company or not going to help your friend or whatever you're trying to do. Like the empty calorie work is actually not necessarily empty calories too, if you rationalize it with like this is getting me better at task X, which will help me better in the future. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like that thinking about that kind of stuff in general, but like I think it's unfortunately logically sound. What do you think?
What is an example of this empty calorie work you're talking about?
Potentially empty calorie work is like startups do this a lot. They're like, hey, come join our startup. You'll be employee number 5. You'll be the first person handling XYZ. You'll help us go from 1 to 100 because we found our product market fit and we're trying to go. And there's like a version of that like, oh no, they actually do have a ton of autonomy, a lot of trust, a lot of responsibility like to do this. And they're just like kind of like LARPing the job until they actually become good at the job because like I think a lot more people can do a lot more than they generally are allowed to. But there's also the empty calorie version of it where like you aren't making the company better and maybe you're not in a position to actually do that. And so you just kind of like play startup for 12 months and
Mm-hmm.
you think you've learned a lot, but then you go and like try to do your own thing and you realize like you were getting really, really good at skill X, but skill Y is the thing that's going to help you in your actual endeavor. Like, so that's kind of what I mean by that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Triggering,
Uh,
right?
well, I feel like that in itself is a lesson. And I don't know whether you would know that you are in that situation. Because I thought when you meant empty calories, I thought you meant like scrolling social media or
Oh,
something.
no,
Which,
that's not
as you
work.
know, it kind of blends into our work. But sometimes I'm
That's,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's beyond what is helpful, kind of thing.
Yeah. Sam calls it slop versus work, which I think is fun. So I'm gonna say that.
Right. But if you're some would say, I mean, a lot of corporate jobs are like that, right? And if you
Yeah.
if you're getting paid, I think that's the tricky thing, is that if you're getting paid, you don't even notice. But then now, in retrospect, I realize that there's like, it could have been better spent learning certain portable skills, is what I would call it.
Yeah. I had a really smart professor describe it as like picking up playbooks, and like that's like the most useful thing that you can do is like pick up playbooks. Because calling it a playbook implies that it's not like you are fundamentally changing as a person. You're like getting a tool for your toolbox. I think most ways you spend your time aren't going to fundamentally change you as a person unless you really want it to. I think like if that were the case, that everything you do changes you as a person, we would all go insane by the time we're 25.
So Sam brings up, if it's a capitalist pursuit, I won't enjoy work. I think this is another controversial point, right? And which I wanted to ask you as well. It's like, there is this, especially when there's a disconnect between financial reward and work, that's where things get a little strange. Like creator stuff, as you know, there's like nothing for the longest time.
The math is bad.
The math is bad. Or in, like crypto investments, where like I feel like there's also a disconnect between work and financial reward.
Oh, I mean, like crypto's gambling. Let's just like call it what it is. It's straight up gambling, hoping that the attention economy like focuses enough attention on the thing that you happen to own, so you can sell it at a high price to a greater fool. Like,
so the work is like being like ahead of the alpha, right? Like, which is it's also work.
It is work, and I'm not trying to like denigrate it as like a field. It's just not how I want to spend my time. I don't think it's like the most effective next move for the things that I'm trying to do. That said, I love making generalizations. In the same breath, I hate generalizations. Like, I don't think just because something is like part of the mechanisms of a market economy, like makes it destined to be a miserable experience. I think that is the outcome of a lot of the systems that we've built, where like, ball bearings got to get sold to ball bearing buying companies, and like somebody's got to make the ball bearings. And I don't think like the fact that it makes money lowers the status or the like frankly the nobility of some person who's just trying to live their freaking life. You know what I mean? And so, because like, again, this is a luxury to be able to like yap about this on the internet and to talk with people in chat and like discuss this stuff. Like most people didn't have the luxury of like, hey, I need to figure out how I'm going to make money tomorrow. And it turns out, Ball Bearing Distributors Unlimited is my best way to do that. And so like, I don't like it on its face as like a gut reaction. I understand it's a very popular sentiment on the internet right now, but like the reality is like functioning markets have increased the median quality of life across the world, like persistently over time. And like, that's a really good thing in my opinion. Are there tweaks to it that we can do? For sure. Little bit of a like veering away from like the concept of work. Like work is like a dual reality and luxury in some places. Like I really do think we're not in the next 5 years, but we're on the path to a world where like working is mostly like filling time versus like meaningful contributions to economic GDP increasing, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of machines that can do like the functions of a job better than your average person that doesn't give a shit about doing that thing. That really makes the concept of like how we spend our time and how we like put blocks on our calendar, if you use a calendar, like it like makes it really important to figure out a system of values to be deliberate about that. And again, this is like a luxury. If you have to work, you have to work. And so I frankly find it much more interesting to think about like how we make the process of work more meaningful, more noble, more fulfilling for people, because like that's going to be the only thing that matters pretty soon, especially if religious trends continue the way they're continuing, like down, less people have like some sort of spirituality or religion or whatever.
So you're saying like by noble, you're saying that you're talking about meaning, right?
Yeah. Like noble is kind of a reaction word that I use to fight back against the concept of like spending time doing something that isn't explicitly self-serving is bad. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do that don't directly benefit you that I think are net good things. That could be like actually explicitly volunteering, or it can be part of an enterprise that like makes things that make people happy, like make the world better or whatever. And like,
Well, I mean, isn't the ideal situation you find something that you enjoy that also is noble? Because it's not sustainable otherwise, right?
yeah, I mean, like life's about seasons. I don't think, I mean, you know this a lot better than me in terms of kind of like Buddhist teachings, but like I find it very hard to believe that you like finish your journey in terms of like spending time in ways that you find valuable. Like, what do you think about that?
The every day I ask myself this question. Um, I feel like this is the ultimate question I want to answer in my life. It's just like,
Mm,
how can I help people find the thing they enjoy and find fun and also produces some economic value so that they can live up doing the thing.
yeah,
And which, it's easy to say, but even that one sentence has so many component parts. And of course,
yeah,
there's like, like, so for many of us, there's just not as many choices, right? As the economy is pressuring everybody even harder. Like,
sure.
just even finding a job is really difficult for a lot of people, let alone a job they enjoy.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like, then how can we, squeeze the joy juice out of the work that we are choosing to do, that kind of thing.
So I have a pair of essays that like you knew I was gonna plug, but like it's
Oh, I didn't know which ones.
so it's a pair of essays. One is capping your existential downside, and the other
Mm.
one is maximizing volatility. Like I forget the actual titles. I'll,
Oh,
I'll
okay.
find them and drop them later. But like
Mhm.
I think there's like two things that I've really embraced when trying to figure out like my life path, and this has kind of developed over the past decade or so. And the first one is like, if you are in a circumstance where you have an existential downside, for like some people, existential downside is like them starving or their family starving. That's
Mhm.
real. That's really important. Like not trying to minimize like that being a frankly like extremely important struggle in people's lives. But there's also a version of existential downside that is like primarily ego driven. I saw this a lot at Harvard Business School, where like the prospect of somebody coming from an extremely wealthy family taking a job that was lower prestige than their family
Mhm.
expected to them,
Mhm.
that was like the worst thing that could happen to them in their mind, right?
Mhm.
Like they get like a crappy like tier 2, tier 3 investment bank instead of Goldman Sachs. Like that's like the
Mhm.
worst outcome for them.
Mhm.
Goofy, ridiculous, extremely privileged, also their reality. Like that was
Yeah,
their worst case for them. And
right.
so like in the spirit of like rigor, I want to treat that as like, hey, that psychologically will ruin their perception of their sense of self and their relationship with their family. And so like if you have a scenario like that in your life, it could just be having to go back to your hometown. That was what I considered my worst case scenario a lot, like for a good amount of time. Half the reason I
Mhm.
joined the army was like, I don't want to go back to Woodstock, Georgia. I just would feel like I had lost. Um, and so you got to cap that first.
Mhm.
Because if you want to live or if you want to like chase asymmetric upsides, which is like moving social status or moving like
Right.
wealth status, whatever, you have to make bets that like you're probably going to lose most of the
Mhm.
time because like we just talked about how that math works. And so
So my
the
question is
yeah,
like, which is similar to what Stuart's bringing up here. If it's possible to live under capitalism and have everything you enjoy and be meaningful, etc. Like, I think the tricky thing is that given the healthcare situation,
yeah,
like, we don't know what our existential downside is. It's almost like
true.
infinite. If you want to, have a health span, and I
Yeah.
think that is the, and as you know, in America, like the biggest causes of bankruptcy is actually getting sick, which is so messed up.
Yeah.
So therefore, it becomes really hard for anyone to feel safe enough psychologically to pursue what they want to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you good enough financial outcomes.
So I think that that is true, but it's also mixed in with a little bit of cope. If I'm being honest, like the and I also
Tell me the
have
code. Actually, I want to know. Okay, tell me what the code is so I can be
well, so
free
first,
from homeless.
I I have a very real bill on my desk right now for like $12,000 for like a medical test that I did, which is important based on like my family history that like my insurance denied coverage of. And
Oh,
so, we did some digging, but like the reality is this is just a scammy company, and you call them and then you say, "Hey, I'm only going to pay $100," and then they're like, "Sure." But like that
oh,
that stuff's real, and like,
yeah.
I'm in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing in the army where when you're planning missions, you're supposed to predict or like try to predict what the enemy's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you define the most probable course of enemy action, and you define the most dangerous course of enemy action. I always thought it was really stupid because the most dangerous course of action is always going to be, oh, they secretly snuck in a tactical nuke to the battlefield and blow everybody up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could say that and that kind of be right, but it
Mm-hmm.
misses the point of there's no way to remove like all risk from every situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the cope in the statement there is like, hey, I'm using the fact that there's always going to be tail risk in my life. There's always going to be hit by a bus risk in my
Mm-hmm.
life. There's
I see.
always going to be, like
Right,
it's
and
a
then the thing is, like, it's always gonna be like, not the thing I predict, right? Like, it's gonna be
yeah,
I get hit by an Amazon Prime truck.
yeah. And
That's
so
it. There's
like
no medical bills involved.
when I
Um,
say cap your existential downside, it's really like cap it within the pragmatic limits of like how life works, right? And there's plenty of people in plenty of parts of the world where like they shouldn't listen to this podcast because they got way more important stuff to talk about than like how to find meaning in like modern society, right? Like there's like actual just bombs getting dropped on their house, and like this is not for that person because clearly they get more important stuff to talk about than listening to us. And
mhm,
so that said, that is real. Tail risk is real. It's something that like I think you can try to reasonably plan for. It's super screwed up that post World War II, the U.S. basically designed its economy to offer healthcare as a way to skirt around bonus restrictions. I don't know if you knew this, but
mhm,
like the development and like intertwining of healthcare with private sector was like a way to give employees extra benefits post World War II
no,
without tripping any type of extra like tax and bonus restrictions post war era. So like it was a way to like get people to get paid more without like
mhm.
like that as one does, and
Right,
it's
right. And
unfortunately
I
inextricably
I
linked
feel
now.
like this is like my hobby research hobby rabbit hole is like medical tourism.
Yep.
Figuring out robots that'll take care of us when we're old. Like I feel like there are things that I'm like practically doing. And of
Yep.
course, I'm still in healthcare consulting for a reason because I'm like, okay, I think this is like the existential downside we need to
Yeah.
cap.
But so all that still leaves us with a scenario that, as somebody pointed out earlier, like you live in a society, you kind of have to have money to live in the society,
Mm,
and you have to generally work to make money. And like there is an ideal perfect state where we're all meditating in the woods somewhere and like achieving enlightenment in kind of like the traditional paths. But like I just think that's not super practical. And
mhm,
I think it is honestly a little bit, I'll say, ridiculous to expect people to follow the perfect path to enlightenment in their life, whatever that means for them. Like we all got crap that happens to us. And so we haven't really talked about the Einstein path at all, where
oh,
there's
let's talk about
like,
that.
yeah, like I think it is a perfectly like reasonable, we'll say the noble word that I keep using. Like, I think it is a noble thing to do to decide, hey, I see my life, I see the limited hours I have in a day. I want to spend 6 hours of it, maybe 3 hours of it doing like work that you're fine with, like you don't like love it. You're doing like night security at a warehouse or something like that. Um, and then you use the freedom that you're earning through that to spend times on the thing that you like, because you don't have to be Jeff Bezos to have a wonderful life. In fact, like that there's a lot of research that suggests that might not be the best way to have a wonderful life. It's a good way
Mhm,
to have a lot of money, but there's a lot of other things that you can do. And so like the concept of work in that circumstance is like you're doing tasks to facilitate your ability to do your work, whatever is meaningful, important to you. And that, could be writing, it could be just playing video games and screwing around on the internet. Like, I don't care. I don't like holding people to these standards of production or output or whatever, unless they decided like rationally that they want to do that. Then I'm like, yeah, I'll hold you to your standard that you've set for yourself. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the Einstein path.
So what about, like, what if your work has a marketing or some component that you don't enjoy? Because I feel like that's what I often see among my friends.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a few friends who are joining us potentially after the other calls. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I feel like this is often the case, right? Like, there's like some mission we're trying to achieve, as someone's brought up as well. And like, there's often like, task A to Z, and then we enjoy task A, B, C.
Yeah.
And then the rest are things that we don't intrinsically enjoy as much, but like, it's necessary. What do you do about that?
I think that you're never going to remove the things that you don't want to do in your life. You're just going to replace them with different things you don't want to do. Like, I have done really not fun things before in the Army.
Yeah, you have that discipline.
Well, I mean, I think discipline in the military is a little bit of also a little bit of cope, because like, it's a lot easier to be disciplined when everybody around you has to do the same thing. And also you're out of society. Like, it's a lot harder to be disciplined when like you have a magic rectangle distracting you at every second of every day. And like, most of the time my time in the Army, I didn't have that. And so like, you develop habits that can like maybe port over to other parts of your life, so you're like better at it. But like, it's not as simple as like, oh, you have great discipline. But like, if you don't like to do that stuff, emotions are valid, feelings are real. Like, it's not like, hey, there's something wrong with you for not liking this thing. But I basically encourage anybody that like feels like this to take a step back and be like, what do I care more about? Do I care more about this like goal that I think I've set that is aligned with like how I want to move through the world? Or do I care about not feeling the feeling in this moment for doing the thing that like, maybe it doesn't match your moral, compass. Like, and if that's the case, I would recommend listening to it more than others. But like, if it's just uncomfortable, I mean, I don't think you should spend most of your time being uncomfortable, but like, we we adapt to the levels of discomfort in our lives, and we get worse at doing uncomfortable things if we don't do them regularly. And so if you don't want to sell your stuff, that's fine, but you also have to accept in the same breath that if you don't sell your stuff and you don't figure out a clever way, like hiring somebody or asking somebody or partnering with somebody to like sell it for you, it's probably not going to sell. And that's not like a moral judgment on you, but like, you are making decisions that are resulting in outcomes for you. And that's a little like intrinsic, like or internal locus of control, fanaticism on my part, though.
I agree. In fact, I feel like most of my friends, especially on here, I often see them they're really good at working. They're really good at grinding. And actually, the decision-making point is like, should you let someone else do that part? Because you have to admit that maybe you're not the best at doing that part.
Yeah. I mean, there's, maybe we do an episode on ego soon, like we've been talking about.
Chad, are you ready for an episode where we explicitly address ego?
Because we both got huge ones.
A little bit.
I was gonna say, I just said we both have huge egos in our own way.
Oh, 100%. And it's also like low self-esteem is actually huge ego, which I think a lot of people don't realize. It's like the opposite. It's like a horseshoe sort of thing. It's like you're so low self-esteem, you're actually back to being high ego. Like, so I feel like I do want to address that, but then it's like, people are gonna feel like we're saying like we're pointing them out or something, but these are actually just universal truths.
I mean, your friends aren't my friends yet. I'm happy to tell them, hey, like, put in the work or stop complaining that it's not happening. Like, and the work might be uncomfortable. I know there might be like I hate posting 3 casts before our show and scheduling casts during it. But that is like the right thing to do. And I haven't been pulling my weight. Kristen's been pulling her weight with it. And that's frankly helping us a lot more. And so like, I don't consider myself above this, like this trap of like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I don't do that. And then I don't get the outcomes that I'm expecting because I didn't do it. You know what I mean? But
That's so funny. I never noticed that you never did it. Wait a minute.
yeah, no, I mean, so I do before. I'll like, but during I have not scheduled one in weeks. So sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Like seriously, I didn't even notice. So this is so funny to me.
I wanna like end on an optimistic note about work. What's an optimistic note about work that we could leave on? Or maybe a question that might have an opportunity to be optimistic about.
I feel like work itself is value neutral. Like for me, I feel like maybe we can address this in a future episode too. Like I'm always not like, oh, I'm tired of work. It's more like I'm literally tired and I've used all my brain juice and I wish I can recover my brain juice faster. Yeah, I know it's not exactly optimistic, but I feel like many of us are naturally actually quite good at working.
Who? Wait, who is?
I think most people like have an intrinsic drive and like are actually, given the right conditions, really good at excelling. And it's just about removing the things that are in our way, that kind of thing.
So I'll rephrase that in how I described it to people when I was teaching at the Army's Officer Candidate School. I fundamentally believe that Latif just arrived. No, I fundamentally believe that very, very few people show up to their job thinking, I really want to do a shitty job today. And like that mentality of, do you think people show up and like suck on purpose, or do they show up because of the context that they've been put in and they just are reacting to it, or they've given up or whatever, is the biggest divide I've seen between kind of like people that manage people in a thoughtful way. And so like, if you think that most people show up, like maybe not wanting to do the best job, but like wanting to not be like a piece of shit at work, then that's like a statement about how you think like work kind of should be, and also how people act like when left to their own devices. Like I basically agree with you that people tend to be diligent about work is maybe the right word. Figuring out how to get somebody in a context where they're like not excited to work hard, but maybe like in the optimal state to be diligent is like the challenge of every like workplace across time and space. This conversation hasn't really happened like in like modern management theory. Like people talk about like how do you make people more productive, how do you optimize production lines, whatever, but like is someone in a condition where they have all the resources at their disposal, they have a span of control that matches like what they want and also what their skills are, like that piece of it, I think we're still writing in terms of like how we think about people. But it's also really important to think about it in the context of yourself too, because like your hey, I wish I could recover faster is kind of a little bit counterbalanced with like, hey, I wish I had more time to do the things that I'm trying to do because I always overschedule my day. And so like I feel like I start the days with mostly the juice that I need to do it, and then I'm not working fast enough where like I'm like saying back to you, I hear you're like, oh, I feel like I wasn't ready to do the things that I decided that I was doing because of like environmental factors or whatever. All that means is we've just identified like how we can maybe adjust our life to be more conducive to producing the kind of work we want to produce, I think.
For sure.
What would you change?
Supplements coming. No comment on that one.
Would you take more supplements? Would you sleep more? Like what tangibly are you going to do to try and like respond to the stimuli that your like body, real or perceived, is giving you?
Oh gosh, it's funny. I have tried that before.
Yeah.
When I was younger, for sure, like all
Mhm.
sorts of nootropics sort of things, and then
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, oh, am I? Well, yeah, like in a way, you're more awake, and however, I didn't think the quality of work was better. I feel like the ultimately it's the delusion I have, right? Of like, if I have more time, therefore I'll make I'll be getting more done. But in reality, is if I make better decisions and stick to them,
Yep.
then I will feel better. So
Mm.
yeah, so I think optimistic note that I want to leave on is like I believe everyone in the chat is like working as hard as they can, and I feel like there's something to. It's more like acknowledging the work that we're doing as well, rather than constantly optimizing it.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
That's real. That's real.
Mhm.
I don't think I agree that everybody in the chat is working as hard as they possibly can, but I do think they are
Because they're
capable.
watching our show.
Yeah, no. Like I do think that they are capable of working as hard as they want to,
Mm,
which is also how I kind of view myself in that like me feeling like I run out of time with what I'm doing is
mhm,
really a function of a lack of focus because I am ascribing importance to a bunch of things that are not as important as the most important thing.
mhm.
And so like I'm trying to be fair with myself too because I put you on the spot. Like I'm trying to cut down on the things that I've decided are important so that I can actually accomplish them.
Right. All right. Let's
I
say
do
hi to
believe in
some
y'all.
chat. Your turn to read.
State of People, which I think is Riley. Thank you so much for sticking around. Alex Payton, thanks for staying all the way to the end. Tutorizer, phenomenal in chat today. Great showing. All right, we got some other people dreaming in. Ajit, thank you. Tsunade, this was not impromptu. We are twice a week, Tuesday, Thursday at 11 Eastern time. Not going to change. Thank you all for coming by, and